Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast brought to you by Literal Humans. As always, I am your host, Paul David, founder and CEO of Literal Humans. And I'm joined today by Greg Freeman, founder and CEO of Data Literacy Academy. We're going to talk about solving the data and AI literacy crisis. Welcome to the pod, Greg.
Hey, Paul. Pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to getting into the discussion.
Yeah, I am too. By way of introduction, Greg, as I mentioned, is the founder and CEO of Data Literacy Academy. They're an organization working with some of the world's top companies to build data-confident cultures. I love that tagline. Not just data-capable teams, so we're going to dig into that. Greg founded Data Literacy Academy after realizing a painful truth that companies are investing billions in data tools, AI platforms, and infrastructure, but none of it works if people don't understand data deeply enough to use it. Up to 83% of the workforce is data illiterate. That's a staggering statistic, leaving businesses unable to act on or monetize their data. Greg's mission is to fix that. His academy helps organizations create meaningful, patient cultural change, transforming disengaged and anxious employees into confident data thinkers who can participate fully in the AI-enabled workplace. You couldn't have a more timely mission, Greg. I'm get excited to dig into this. So let's jump in. Tell us, big question, paint the landscape for our audience. Why is data literacy becoming one of the biggest competitive advantages for companies today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, candidly, Paul, I'd rather more companies thought about it that way and described it that way. I think at the moment, people very much see the people side of data and AI, call it the literacy side, call it the culture side, whatever it might be, as a bit of a nice to have rather than a must have. And what's super exciting is when we meet chief data officers, chief information officers, who've kind of already closed that gap in their heads from this is a nice to have to this is a need to have. Typically, that's linked to their journey through data and AI maturity, if I'm honest. So I think there's a number of CDOs, CIOs out there who've spent an awful lot of money on technology, like you describe, and they were sold. And I will say I'm a little bit biased, but I think there's a dream sold by Silicon Valley and all the venture capital money that goes into Silicon Valley that technology is going to solve every one of the world's ills and problems. And I mean, honestly, the more organizations of a certain size you go into where we are into the tens, hundreds, millions, even billions of dollars have been spent on technology, yet they still can't really describe the value they've elicited. They still can't really put a quantified number on that. And a lot of that is because the dream of having data-led culture and data-driven culture has absolutely nothing to do with having your data in the technology or your data right in the technology, and has everything to do with the fact that your senior people, your leaders, your strategists, your decision makers have to be able to make a decision off the back of it. They have to understand what they've seen and heard. They have to trust what they've seen and heard from the data, and they have to believe in their whole heart that it is going to be a better decision because of that than if they'd just gone with their gut. Right. And I think realistically, as long as there's an assumed understanding that decisions that are made enabled by data and enabled by AI are going to be competitively better than those that have not, the absolute no-brainer and the competitive advantage in data and AI literacy and culture is that you require your people to be of that ilk where they can make those decisions to be competitive. And I think that's where it all comes together, really. And the thing that most people are blind to is how few people actually really believe in the data they have access to, trust it, understand where it's come from so that they can believe in it, and then really want to make decisions in a different way. And it's much more a mindset and set of behaviors than it is necessarily a skill set. There's definitely a skill set underpinning it, but that true competitive advantage comes from an innovation mindset, doing things differently from the way they've always been done. And I think that's where the competitive advantage comes in.
Let's dig into that. We're talking about a gap that exists here, right? So companies are pouring millions into AI and data analytics, but many of them are struggling to turn that data into action. And oftentimes I think a lot of these things are about leadership, they have misconceptions. They're not able to move from data readiness to actual data capability across their teams. So talk to us about that. What are some of these misconceptions? What's driving this gap out there?
Yeah, I think firstly, I think leadership's a really good call out. And I think it's one of the biggest blockers to real progress in this space, being totally truthful with you. I mean, I'm not the type of person who sits on the fence when it comes to stroking the egos of senior execs and leaders. They're a massive part of this problem, but also a massive part of the opportunity. The more programs we do, the more large companies we deliver into, the level of buy-in you get from an executive level, and I think worth saying, not a technical exec level. Most people on the technical side are very behind this space. It's really, does our CEO, does our CFO, does our COO, chief sales officer, do they believe that data and AI are going to have the impact on the business that it probably can? And therefore, are they transmitting that message to the business overall? So I think the really difficult thing for commercial leaders to get their head around is they've spent most of their careers exposed to data in some sort of way, even if it's just backwards looking, BI, MI, kind of management information reporting. And therefore, they can't imagine a world where the rest of the business, let's say it's the other 95% outside of data professionals and senior leaders, just don't care about this space. The other thing that's really difficult for them to get their heads around is that actually it would be career suicide to sit at a C-suite table now and say that data and AI are not going to change the way we work. I think like the problem is there's a lot of people sat around those tables saying it, but not really understanding it, not really truly believing it when you kind of prod and get to the like, do you actually believe this though? Do you know what the difference will look like? And therefore, you've got a lot of people giving lip service to this space from a leadership level. Yes, this is going to be competitive advantage for us, but because they don't truly understand it, they actually can't articulate why that's going to be different. So we want to get the leaders to a place where they're comfortable too.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you're talking about both skills and motivation. So like would love to dig into that. So, data and AI are taking over and enhancing a lot of workflows. Would love to understand like the skills that you believe employees need to have, but also, talk about that motivation side. Like how do we make that other 95% of the workforce believe that it's important and, integral to their
it is as much a change management piece as it is a skills piece. And I think one of the mistakes we see an awful lot of, and one of the things that makes it more difficult to measure the success and outcomes from programs that we maybe observe other people running or see elsewhere in the industry, is that actually a lot of people are just seeing this as a skills program. It's like, okay, AI is a new thing. Let's teach everybody to prompt engineer. Okay, but how do you actually understand that they've changed their behaviors, that they've changed their mindset, that they're solving problems in a different way? How do you measure that off the back of it? And I think that very clear view of this is why we're doing this intervention and this is where we're targeting it. I'm not saying there's actually a massive play of generally raising the floor across the organization, and just things like from a skills perspective or even a mindset and understanding perspective, things like knowing why you need to govern your data better, contribute to data quality. Everybody contributes to data quality in a business. Responsible AI. These topics are absolute no-brainers for everybody in the organization, because fundamentally for the business to improve in those areas and keep its data and people safe, everybody has to understand that. But what I think is the bigger barrier is that what you actually want to get out of data and AI when you're a senior leader or when you're somebody spending a lot of money on it is the change in outcome. And at the moment, the data and AI industry is measured too much on inputs and outputs and not enough on outcomes. And the reason that we can't really validate outcomes is that the people around the business don't see how it's going to change the way they work or the decisions they make. And that's really where the change management piece comes in. So you need to spend as much of your time building awareness, building clarity in the value, building clear success criteria and measures as you do actually teaching people anything, because it's really the winning hearts and minds first that's going to help you win the day. And not only winning hearts and minds once, but winning it repeatedly over 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, until you've evolved to a point where you've got a culture that you can actually stand by around data and AI.
Yeah, I love this thread in the conversation of it's not just about the tech and the data and the AI. It's about the people and how they're thinking about it, feeling about it, leveraging it on a regular basis, and keeping them, sort of both motivated and upskilled, to be able to do that. So that's great. Good segue into just talking about how you do it. So, how does Data Literacy Academy help organizations build a data confident culture? Just take us on a little bit of a walkthrough through your approach and how the program looks, from the inside.
Yeah, and I think the key thing here is that whether you're working with us on this or whether you're thinking about doing it internally, you need to hit the same level of conditions and markers, I think is the key thing. And the first thing that we've got to do, and I say this as a external partner working with a client, or if I'm the internal data team, is not understand what the data office wants, but understand what the business and the commercial leaders want. So we referred to earlier, the business leaders have to truly back this and want it to happen within the organization. The only way to do that is to kind of really get into what is that corporate strategy? What's the transformation strategy? Where's value going to be delivered by any program of work that happens within the business? This just happens to be a data and AI literacy one. And again, that's something we see a real weakness with data teams. A lot of people are doing data literacy, AI literacy, either because they've been told to, which is not always the best reason, but it's one reason, or because as a data office, the business people are a headache. They don't know how to work with us. It's all their fault. Actually, you've got to flip the script a little bit and put it in their shoes. So the first thing we're going to do is truly understand what are the value drivers, what are the outcomes that the CEO is looking for, the CFO is looking for, the COO is looking for. Then compose a level of comms plan, change plan, engagement plan for either the wider business, if you're going totally horizontal, or if you're going much more targeted interventions. How do we speak specifically to those key groups? We call them key strategic cohorts, and they're targeted interventions of people who are strategically more valuable to the business. On top of that, obviously, you have the learning. I think we've always been really passionate about live learning, and a lot of our best work is in the live education space, primarily live online because of the way that businesses are distributed these days. But live in person works. Events in person work. They get the story told around why this is going to be valuable. And now we have a self-paced kind of learning plan that people can go on. I think the key thing as well, and people often say, oh, well, if we just roll out a load of LinkedIn Learning or Udemy, or fill the void with whatever like typical learning plan you could put in my mind, again, a lot of the data and AI literacy content that's out there has been created by data people to solve the problem that they observe, not the problem that the business person observes. And therefore, we're always very, very thoughtful in how we make data and AI literacy a tool for the business to get better at their jobs, not just data and AI for data and AI's sake. And I think, again, that's something you've really got to watch out for. Make sure that you're giving a business view of data and AI literacy, not just, well, I'm a data professional, I think it's important that you know the BI tool or you know how to write SQL. That is going to be valuable to a really small proportion of people. How do you actually communicate data and AI to a level that they need and is going to be valuable to them in their jobs?
Yeah. I mean, let's dig a bit more into the sort of the human element of it too, and I appreciate what you said about kind of, it's something we do, sitting down with the C-suite, mapping out what they want their growth goals to be, and then looking across the organization. And we look at product, we look at, marketing, we look at sales. It's not just, just marketing, 'cause that's one lever, and then map that across the organization. And how do you pull those different levers within those different groups? I love that you do that. So it's very aligned. We know that a lot of employees, they feel intimidated or anxious about data, about AI, about analytics. I want to understand how you all in your live learning and the way you deliver the work that you do, how do you remove that fear and bring them into the process? And then also thinking big picture, when you're able to achieve that, big cultural transformation, what changes do you tend to see in a company, and yeah, how does that look?
I think to answer that first question, you have to be cognizant of the fact that people do have that fear around data and AI. I think the understood fear around AI is that people think it's going to take their jobs. And that's now like a very popular fear that people have around data and AI. But actually, so my background is in education, and there's a concept in education, or the theory of education is called pedagogy. So there is a pedagogical theory called taught fear. And taught fear is the concept that as human beings, we've taught ourselves there are subjects that we can't learn. So it's not that we're not smart enough, but actually we've had bad experiences with them. and we've decided that they're not for us. So you'll always defer it to someone else. So mine is languages, for instance. If you ask me to learn a language, I'll say, oh, no, don't worry. If we're going to Spain, my wife learns the language. We'll make that work. I will never engage with it. Unfortunately, maths and stats and new ways of working, new technologies, they all fit into this bracket of fairly organic taught fears for a lot of the population. A lot of people gave up math when they were 16 and then never went back to it because they didn't like it, and they taught themselves it wasn't for them. So we've got to be really aware of that. And that's why I think getting your learning entry point to a level that seems far lower than most data professionals could ever imagine it needing to be is a really important facet of a good program. So if you go into your program with the assumption that everybody's going to want this and everybody will be a part of it, and why wouldn't they be, you're going to miss the mark on your kind of lowest common denominator level. For us, that is literally classes on how do you build your personal confidence? Like, what can you do in your personal life that might help you get a little bit more comfortable with data or AI so that you can go into your working life and be a bit more comfortable. Yeah, I think it's about getting your mindset from an entry level perspective to a level that it's very difficult to think about when you're already a data professional, you're already data comfortable. But maybe finding your own taught fear and thinking, if I was going to be talking about going to the gym, or if I was thinking about standing up and speaking in public, like what level of confidence build would I need before I actually got into the subject? I do remember your last question.
What changes do you see when a company actually commits to that, cultural transformation around data and AI instead of just doing a one-off training?
Yeah, so I think it's one of the most important things is to set out on that journey of this being a multi-year cultural change plan rather than one-off journey. And the reason I say that is that things take time. There's very much this idea that actually what we've got to do is change people's behaviors, and you'll have heard in marketing, people have got to hear a thing 7 times before you actually you understand it and you learn it. Like, in my mind, with data and AI literacy and culture, it's probably even more than that. People have heard repeatedly, this is going to be valuable, this is going to work for you, you should do this, and they're still not doing it, which means that what we want to see is an environment where, and this is where we get our clients to in the end, but a patience with this is the really important thing. Like I said, it's a multi-year journey to get to this point, but we've got clients now where they sing about the fact that their senior leaders and their middle managers, it's no longer the data office that are having to like provide the data into the meetings and prepare the data for the reports. They're actually able to bring their own with their own hypotheses, having run their own tests. And then even like small cultural benefits, like people saying, oh, I have a hypothesis that, rather than, well, I've always done it this way, so I'm going to do it that way again. Those things become very organic. But you see lots of benefits around technology adoption, and we've obviously said that this is a technology enabling piece in my mind. Like, if you are rolling out a data product or an AI product and you don't do a solid data literacy and change program with it, I think you're missing a trick. I think the journey that you bring the people on alongside the implementation is what's really going to help you deliver that expected ROI from it. So very, very keen to ensure that everybody sees that as a key priority and a key enabler. And then even things like data quality and data governance improvements are night and day in businesses that do this well, because if people care about data and AI, they also then care about data quality. So they fix it at source. 95% of data is created by human beings, I'd say. Like, people always blame the technology, but actually most of the data quality in a business, especially where it's largely knowledge workers as the audience, is created by the people. So again, if you want your governance, you want your responsible AI, you want your data quality to improve, data and AI literacy as part of your culture is going to be imperative.
Yeah. We'd love to dig a bit further into kind of the sort of challenges and opportunities in, data transformation right now. And I know you work directly with chief data officers, CIOs, and, other C-suite, folks. Talk about the barriers first. Like, what do they consistently run into when they try to modernize their organizations?
So, I mean, we've referred to leadership already. That'll be the thing that most CDOs will tell you is their biggest barrier, I would say. However, I think I'm also pragmatic and critical in some ways and would say, do you know what? If you can't sell data and AI, which is ultimately your job as a leader, then are you doing that in the right way? Do you really understand the world they operate in well enough? Can you walk a day in their shoes? And the best CDOs we work with are really the ones who can do that. They understand the world through the lens of the CEO, the CFO, the COO, chief marketing officer, whatever it might be. They can walk a day in their commercial shoes, the best CDOs we meet. So as much as yes, leadership is definitely a blocker, and people really worry when we go into the room with their C-suites, like, is this going to land well? Are they going to like what they hear? And as I said to you all earlier, Paul, we don't massage egos. We do say, look, you have a responsibility here. And I don't mean as a data owner, because that's the responsibility that people have talked to you about before. Like, yes, you are accountable. That's just your job as a C-suite member, as a board member. But actually, you're responsible from a role modeling perspective, a behaviors and exemplifying the right behaviors perspective, asking more of your people perspective. And that message really does land well, interestingly. And so that is a way you can unblock your leaders. And then I think the other thing that people often tell us is time. Like everybody's busy, everybody says that they're already at full capacity, and ultimately you've just got to change the lens from a like concern to a value. If people value this and believe this is going to change their careers, their jobs, their ways of working in the right way, it will be successful for them. So you will get them to dedicate that time. And again, that's something I'm really proud of us being able to do. I think we do win hearts and minds to get people to dedicate the time to this topic.
Yeah, I love that reframe from, from a concern into a value because values are active. They're things we try to practice every day. And we have systems and processes to sort of, measure and understand how we're living up to the values that we state. Whereas concerns, they kind of get pushed to the back burner and they drive a lot of fear and anxiety and things like that. So I love that reframe. That seems critical. Let's dig into that. So when you see it, being treated as a value rather than a concern, and you have a successful data culture, what does that look like in practice, and how do you help companies measure it?
For me, the big change that you want to see is problems being solved in a new way. And that comes down to one of my favorite measures of any program we run or anybody else should be running. What are the use cases, the business problems, the business opportunities that a more data literate workforce surfaces that can then be given a value and solved? Ultimately, if you have a more data literate workforce, this is going to sound like a champagne problem to a lot of people, but it is a champagne problem. Actually, if this works, the data and AI office will have a lot of knocks on their door with people saying, can you help me with this? Can you solve this problem for me? I've realized that actually I need this data set in order to solve this problem. Can you get me this data set paired with this data set? Do you know what? Absolute champagne problem. Most data offices can't get people to speak to them, let alone come in with all the business problems. So I think still, as much as there's lots of different ways we need to measure this, like data quality improvements, like better decision-making processes with data at the core, all those types of things, the big measure I'll always come back to is, are people surfacing more value opportunities because they now see that the way they've always solved a problem isn't the way to solve it anymore? And it sounds quite simple, but if you actually start to track that, come up with a formula for how you collect it, and then go a level deeper, what's the value that could be realized from that? Give it a measure, give it an ROI, give it a dollar value, and actually then, off the back of that, deliver some of those as solutions. You all of a sudden have a different way of working and more people who are looking to solve their problems through data and AI.
I love that because you've got both the internal measure of we're going to work differently internally. Like we're going to use the data and AI office as a resource, and it's built into our processes that we should be solving problems with this new level of access that we have to data and AI. And then also sort of, the commercial sort of business side measure of, we've got new use cases, we're solving problems, and we have new opportunities that we can leverage with clients and customers with that more data literate workforce. So that's amazing. I think you've nailed that there. Would love to dig a bit more into your background and kind of what led you as a leader, as a founder, to dig into, helping people understand their data culture and helping them transform it. I know you've led commercial teams across SaaS and data companies. I'm curious about how your perspective has been shaped on data literacy throughout those different roles. What made you want to focus entirely on helping people understand, data and AI literacy?
Yeah, for me, it was always that so I actually ended up in a commercial leadership role in what would be considered a data company. So you would have said that, like, of everyone else in the business, pretty much everyone else was a data professional in some sort of way. A few people built software, but actually, like, there was data science backgrounds, there was engineering backgrounds, analysis backgrounds. And I was like, look, this is what we do for a living. Help me understand. Like, take me as kind of like completely dumb to it all. What do I need to know? How can you help me understand the value? And they started talking about SQL, and they started talking about aggregating data sets. And I was like, okay, I get it. We do pipelines, we do SQL, but what actually is the value for me as a commercial leader? And firstly, I'd started to do some of my own stuff in the background and overcome some of my own fears, because I'll be honest, I wasn't great at math at school. Like, that wasn't my go-to subject. I was much more into kind of English and drama and sport. I had that underlying fear, I think, that how would I get my head around this if I didn't know math? So in that sense, the biggest eye-opening thing for me was that none of them, as the world of data professionals, could help me to get on that journey, really. All I wanted was someone to, like, hold my hand and kind of like put their arm around my shoulder and coach me through it. And they were all so far away from the point that I was at, which was obviously a low starting point in comparison, that they just couldn't help me. So that new lens on what does the very lowest common denominator look like was really eye-opening for me. Like I said earlier, my degree's in education, so I kind of have always had a passion for education. My mum was a teacher at secondary school, at high school, and therefore I've been around education my whole life. And I think I've always wanted to found my own business. Like, it was always the plan. I was just waiting for the right thing to come along. So it was almost a perfect storm of me wanting to bring myself on this journey, and actually, more than anything, having to take myself on this journey because nobody else seemed able to. And then, having always had the education as a passion, I just looked at this market that was loads of data professionals trying to teach people how to do this thing called data. And I was like, none of them are doing it right. None of them really understand where I'm coming from. So it just made sense to try and solve the problem. And very quickly, we became an enterprise-focused business, now work across some of the largest organizations in the world. And it's been a really exciting few years.
That's amazing. Yeah, I really relate to that. I mean, I've got a background in education too. I started my career as a middle school teacher in the States,
Nice.
and was one of those kids who, like, had that taught fear around math, and I wasn't very good at art and a little bit at science as well. But coming into a leadership position, I'm a commercial leader now, like, struggling with the finance side of it and really trying to drag myself across that line, and definitely relating to your point about, like, even though you're in a senior position, like, you do want a little hand holding to
Yeah.
help you get over that fear and help you to upskill. So really relate to that perspective. And I think that's a great origin story, because I think some of the best products and services and startups come from inside of what people are feeling about what they're not getting in the world. And then they go build it. So that's fantastic. Would love to just understand what's next for you in Data Literacy Academy. Are there any new programs, markets? And we love, first time announcements on the pod, obviously. Any approaches that you're excited, for 2026? What's the outlook for the new year?
I think fundamentally we are probably going into another part of our scale up journey now. So we've gone from just myself 3 and a bit years ago to close to 100 people who take some sort of money out of the business every month now. So we've definitely grown fairly exponentially, but I think we've kind of got to double down now. I would expect us to spend a lot more time thinking about the US market. We're growing our presence there with some really good clients. And that's going to be, I'd say, material for the business moving forwards. I'm personally really excited about the US. Football or American football, depending on who's listening, is my sport. So, in
Who's your
fact, a
team,
lot of
Greg? Who's your team?
so Paul, because I've always been so clear that I wanted to move to the US, I've
Uh-huh.
actually really refused to pick an NFL team,
Okay.
because wherever I land, I will just buy a season ticket for the
Fair.
closest NFL and college teams, and then they'll be my
Fair.
team. So
Fair, fair, fair.
I have a soft spot for the Jaguars because of the London
Okay.
connection, but overall, it'll be wherever we move the
I
business
have
to.
I have
It'll
a
be my team.
strong suggestion for you, and that's the world champion Philadelphia Eagles.
So yeah, I think the US market will be
Yeah.
massive for us during 26, 27, 28 would be my guess.
And what does that? You said double down, so it sounds like you have. And we'd be remiss if we didn't ask a couple growth strategy questions. We're a growth consultancy, so what does doubling down look like? What is working for you that you want to keep doing in terms of your growth strategy? What are maybe some things you want to stop doing? What are some things that you want to start doing that you haven't been doing? To walk me through that.
Great set of questions. I think number one, we've probably just got to the point where I can really see the outbound motion working and working at a new pace. We've got a load of reps now who can close business and are doing really good jobs of closing their own business, fairly independent of me and the other senior people, which is an exciting place to be. Our marketing team have done a great job of building the brand this year. I think we already had a good brand going into this year, but I think this 2025 period's been very good from kind of cementing our space, our place as the leading UK European data literacy for business people, or data and AI literacy for business people position. And the big one that I would love to get better at from our side, and we're hiring for at the moment, is partnerships, because we have deliberately kept ourselves in our own kind of vertical niche where it's amazing how much we get exposed to what people are doing in their technology and data and their technology and AI, etc. But we don't do any of that, which means I think we've got a really lovely position where we can partner with some great consultancies and great tech vendors who care more about the technology, and we can be their people enablement. So I would see the partnerships as a real growth opportunity for us going into the next couple of years.
That's great. And that really aligns with what we're seeing in the market too. We're seeing a lot of prospects and clients ask about building partnership infrastructure. So, a microsite that partners can go in and connect with each other and build, relationships and content, thinking about like what Gartner does and some of the big,
Yep.
the big dogs in terms of really premium content that, moves the funnel, as it were, for partnerships. I just think partnerships are becoming much more critical as, ironically, the AI stuff is moving us to maybe be a bit more human in various ways.
Yeah.
We're locking arms, so that's cool to hear. Great. I have some potential leads for you. We'll talk offline about that. But yeah. Let's jump into the quick fire questions. I'm going to hold you to it. So just give me like the first thing that comes to your mind. You've obviously looked at these, and like a sentence or two of explanation. It's just a fun way for the audience to kind of get to know you as a person. So we know you're busy with Data Literacy Academy, but if you were going to go and start another startup, what would it be and why?
Another business that I had considered before Data Literacy Academy was in the UK, there's not really a standalone commercial car finance player. And I think although B2C terrifies me, that I am just not a B2C person. I think I'm very comfortable in the B2B world. I had considered building a really kind of like cool brand in the car finance space, because I don't think it's been done in the same way as mortgages and personal finance have.
Interesting. That's a cool answer. We've not had anyone answer with anything car finance related before, so that's cool. We'll give you these two together. So what tech invention makes you most excited right now, and which one makes you the most concerned?
So I actually am not that tech passionate, and I'm really sorry to say that on a tech podcast. But
It's okay.
if you were to ask me what I'm excited by, I'm excited by brands that are changing the way that traditional markets work through brand and execution. So there's a business in the UK called The Lounges. And most people don't know that they're a chain of maybe 150, 200 restaurants, because they all feel extremely independent when you're in them. But when you put it all together, they are this mega brand in an industry that is struggling and has been struggling since COVID. But the lounges have just completely changed the way that a restaurant business can be built. And that's probably what I get most excited about. I mean, I'm much more likely, I'd say, to start a plumbing business at scale than I am to start another tech business, or maybe. So yeah, it's more the invention in the traditional industries that I get excited about. What makes me most concerned? I mean, it's a bit vague, but just the idea that people are going to start moving away from people-focused relationships and people-focused businesses. So, I can't stand the idea of like AI SDRing. I think it's yes within reason at a certain scale, but to build material relationships with enterprises, I think it's very much a support network. It's not the answer. So I think people's over dependence and over transformation towards AI and not keeping humans in the loop is probably the thing that I'm most worried about, because I think there's some people who are making decisions that are not going to benefit them long term.
Yeah, I think the sales question is really interesting. We had John Richardson from mysalescoach.com on, and
Yeah,
I actually think it's going to maybe move in the other direction eventually. People are going to over-index, and then the people who can really sell, I mean, like really sell, are going to become incredibly valuable because they're
I
going to
agree.
need to, yeah. So and I don't think humans are going to let go of basic, like
No,
big decisions, big ticket, sales.
100%.
So yeah, yeah. On the topic of literal humans, who is a literal human, small L, small h, who has been integral to your career journey that you want to shout out?
My wife, and I'm sure lots of people do this, but I'm really lucky that my wife has always had a very stable job. So she's a stroke and palliative doctor. So she deals with stuff on a day-to-day basis that I have never considered dealing with, and certainly couldn't. Some of the stuff that we talk about over the dinner table is beyond my emotions on a day-to-day basis. But that steadiness of working for the National Health Service in the UK has meant that I've been able to take more aggressive leaps in my personal career and go for earlier stage, higher risk startups, and really has been the reason that we've got to where we are today with a business that is hopefully going to really change both of our lives long term. So yeah, I think having that stability in your relationship, particularly from our own profession, has been really powerful for growing this business and the career decisions I've made previously.
That's amazing. And I'm always, yeah, having that active conversation with my partner about like, founder life and, what it takes and, late nights and just different things, going to events and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's a great shout out. I appreciate that. And she's learning Spanish, so you guys can go to Spain, it sounds like too. So,
Exactly.
tell me an inspirational quote that stuck with you through your career journey in data literacy and AI.
Yeah, so I'm not going to bring the tone down, but like we can't talk about this person without acknowledging the sad events of a year or so ago. So there's a guy, he was called Ryan McCabe. He was the CEO of a business called Odro in the UK. Unfortunately, was involved in a motorbike accident and lost his life in that. He's very well known within particularly recruitment technology, which is part of my background. And before he died, Ryan said to me when I was just getting ready for the journey, he was like, "The thing that you need to remember, Greg, is that if you wake up every day and think this is motivation, you'll fail. This is all about discipline." Ever since, I've been like, okay, so I don't need to be motivated when I wake up at whatever silly time I wake up at. I just have to do it again. That's all it is. It's discipline, not motivation. And that has stuck with me, and it stuck with me before Ryan passed, but it lives on even stronger now that obviously Ryan's not around. And yeah, he's also been heavily involved in the American football scene in the UK, so I kind of know him and lots of his friends through that as well. So it's really kind of like a full circle relationship, work and pleasure. But yeah, that stuck with me, and it's the thing that I think about when the days are long and rubbish, and actually you've
Yeah.
just got to keep doing what you've got to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a great way to honor his legacy. Yeah, we've been reading "Discipline is Destiny" by Ryan Holiday, and like I just, yeah, I need it so much, and it's been powerful to see those different lessons from leaders in the past who have really won on discipline. So
Yep.
yeah. Well, listen, this has been a great conversation, Greg. I think it highlights a blind spot that a lot of organizations have is that technology is moving really fast, and the people don't automatically move with it, and you need a process and system and culture to kind of build both the skills and the motivation and the discipline, as you just said. And it's cool to see that Data Literacy Academy is proving that when you invest in those people and not just the tech tools, you can unlock the real value of AI and data literacy. So I want to thank you for joining us. And Greg, where can folks find out more about Data Literacy Academy?
You can either go to www.dl-academy.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, where I am so I'm told, overly active. So that's a warning, if anything. If you decide to either connect or follow, then that's on you. You were warned. But yeah, either of those routes will help you find out more about how we help organizations to roll out data and AI literacy at scale.
Amazing. And yeah, just want to thank you again, Greg. I mean, one of the pleasures of my job at running a growth consultancy that works with founders like yourself is to get to hear your story and to get to hear about the amazing work that you're doing to help millions of people improve their AI and data literacy culture. So I want to thank you for your time because I know it's really valuable.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And for our listeners, this has been another great episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast brought to you by Literal Humans. As always, I'm Paul David, your CEO and host. Please leave a review, leave us some stars. If you really enjoyed this episode, we can get a few great more guests like Greg Freeman, CEO of Data Literacy Academy, onto the show. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.